what advice do you have for how specific you get on these data terms? It feels like we'd want to get really specific because it's so important, but you probably can't because it's changing and it's dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question, Laura, because this lets me get on my soapbox a little bit. I know this may sound sort of self-serving coming from a vendor, but I really do believe that the best process for data security is to have data security professionals and engineers largely dealing with the details. Lawyers can be very smart around this stuff, but ultimately, lawyers talking to lawyers often becomes too adversarial. It's much better if it can be a cooperative process. The end goal really should be to get to an overall comprehensive data security program that I can implement and everyone is comfortable with. It's not very helpful to have someone else's program dropped in my lap and say, okay, now you have to comply with this as a contractual requirement. I just can't. As a vendor, you can't have a data security program for every single customer. It's just not going to be practical. It's not going to help the customers ultimately because my engineers and my personnel are just going to ignore it because they can't process 50 different data security programs every day and still do their job. I do think that there are instances where contractual obligations are really good to have. But overall, I think the best process is look, you review my program, review my controls, review my policies, my audit attestation, all that, get comfortable with our program. And then I will agree as a contractual matter to comply with that program and to let you know if the program changes. And then, of course, you can negotiate out if there's material changes to the program and that materially affect the way your data is treated. And in the worst case scenario, you may want an out of the contract. And those kinds of provisions are fine. But ultimately, the real details around data security, I prefer to handle that in the program and not really in the contract.
Yeah. And it sounds a lot like what I hear with related to SaaS, where people would try to negotiate customized things for with a SaaS vendor, and that doesn't make any sense because it's one instance for many customers. It sounds like that's definitely the case for vendors as well, and some of the kinds of AI products. But presumably there's some products that are more homegrown, there's more development going on and all of that. Do you have any advice on those kinds of programs when it's more how people deal with the specificity when it's more of a development kind of situation?
Yeah, of course. If it is a very sort of bespoke development process, then you're going to want to have more contractual protections. It also will depend on where the data is sitting, how much control you're giving over the data. So, yeah, there are absolutely going to be instances where if you're handing over your data whole cloth for a bespoke development program, you'll want to have a more specific data security program in place. But even there, I think it's really important to have the quote unquote end users, the data security professionals in the loop. It shouldn't just be lawyers talking to each other because at the end of the day, the people that are going to have to implement it should be in the loop on the discussions around what the program looks like.
Yeah.
I'll just add to that. There's not just only the development. There's also with SaaS, you can have private SaaS. You can have private SaaS with AI, and you can also have use your own model. So depending on how important security is to your organization, there might be avenues you can explore with your vendor to bring some of the security concerns under your own roof instead of being under the vendor's roof to further protect security.
Okay. Is that where you would control the security around your data? That's if it's more of a private SaaS analogy product.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense.
Add that to though, from a customer's perspective, I should know what's going on with my own data before I come to them for a solution. So I got some homework before the contract. Having your information governance program and understanding the legal restrictions on all your own data is really important before you go to a vendor and expect them to solve your problem. And that's what we're seeing that a lot as well too. You know, we're going to have access to all of this. You need access to all of this. And I have no idea where my data lives or what the legal responsibility is. And can you fix that for me? And that's really not fair. A lot of customers that come to us or clients that come to us on this journey, that's where we start. Let's take a look at what you're doing with your own data first, because we have never lived in a time, especially in the United States, where data has been more legally restricted. And understanding that is really important because data is the lifeblood of AI.
Yeah.
And not just restricted in terms of the regulatory schema around the data, but also we are in a very connected world. Everyone is the customer and the vendor at once of different parties. And so understanding what your obligations are to your downstream customers, users, and how that shapes what you need with your upstream contracts is really important to see the big picture around data security, not just that one contract in a moment.